Did the play sort of take shape in one smooth swelt, or did it come together in stages for you?
But both of those things. Initially, having spent 3 years writing one piece, 2.5 years writing the second piece, I was determined to get the initial draft done very quickly, so that the birthing process was not prolonged. The initial draft, I think I produced in about 2 months, including writing the book, the story, which I actually penned most of that in Jamaica. My father was unwell. I was the closest to him. My sister said, get out there and spend time with him. And so there were songs that were written walking along 7 Mile Beach in Negro. A particular song called I'm Tasting Freedom for the first time in my life. I sung it for the 7 miles on the way back there and sung it for 7 miles on the way back. And so much took shape then. But literally from about April 2006, when I first sat down with people and said to them, tell me, who was Martin Luther King to you? What was your experience of the civil rights movement? And one by one gathered information from interviews. That process to the first finished libretto, so all the lyrics and all the music still in my head, was a little over 2 months. The step aspect of the process has been the number of revisions since then. Change after change after change, refining it, enhancing the story, and the most substantial change has been recently, within the last year, when a piece that was fundamentally operatic in structure, and quite operatic in feel also, had added to it soul, blues, jazz, spiritual, gospel, tones, inflections, infusion, to bring it to what we now have here.
What, in terms of getting your dream to come to this point, you have to convince other people to buy into your dream. How did that process go, and who did you approach? And I'm sure it's never an easy thing to get people to invest into your dream. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Individuals, convincing individuals
was kind of covering it overall.
I think overall I think if it's one thing, it's been by believing in the piece and what it is and how significant it might be if it could be produced as it's about to be. Particular individuals, I think one of the individuals whose names just seemed to maybe be able to help if I could reach her was Mayor Shirley Franklin during her tenure, the last term as mayor. And she was very significant, and her, in addition to her, the head of the Office of Cultural Affairs, and Camille Love, probably the two first and best friends in the city, who they were a little wary of this strange Englishman, as Camille's often told me, and I don't know whether the actual words from Mayor Franklin to her were just do something to get rid of him or just humour him, but they gave us an opportunity to present to 120 interns at City Hall, interns who cared nothing about musical theatre. And I think it was their response to the presentation that convinced them that their support would help make this happen in Atlanta, and they opened doors to so many places, to Ebenezer, to the King estate, the King family, and friends in the city that an outsider really needed, because up to that point I'd spent a lot of time knocking on doors and trying to find friends, and maybe 2 years of that process. And that's the point that you're just not really certain that this is ever going to work. And maybe I shouldn't have bothered. Or maybe I should have tried to open it in London or somewhere else in the world, or written about someone else.
Uh-huh. What stage of King's life does the period cover the play?
Begins in about 1938, so it covers his childhood through to moments after the 68 assassination. So about a 30-year span, which is obviously rather ambitious in little over 2 hours of theatre. But it touches in his childhood, his relationship with his grandmother, and some of the formative things that may have influenced who he eventually became. The next part covers his college years. The third part covers Montgomery, the Montgomery bus boycott, 1955, Rosa Parks, and all that happened there. The fourth part covers probably about 1960, from returning to Atlanta, being arrested at lunch counters, and And then the fifth part, the final years of his life, probably about 67, 68. Yeah.
Pretty ambitious.
It is. Yeah, and I saw an interesting comment in Creative Loafing on exactly that point. This piece tries to cover all these years and one of the most influential lives in American history. Hey, no pressure, I think was the final thing. But you know, I think why not attempt it? I've heard of talk of movies on the subject, and they're going to have to do the same thing. Although many people advised not to take the whole span, but instead to try and focus on a particular area. For example, why don't you just focus on his adult years or the last 2 years of his life, or Selma, or something. But that just didn't seem right. I believe in the power of narrative, and the broader the narrative, the better it seemed to me to be. In addition to that, I was clear on this thing that this piece was about unpacking the heart of Martin Luther King Jr. as I could understand it. Because of course this is my interpretation. I didn't know him, read about him, heard what others said about him. But to unpack his heart, I had to take him over the broadest spans possible of his life. And so that's what I've tried to do. And music helps.